Hi there, we're the Huge Movie Fanatics. This is Nate. I'm Matt from State of Flux.
State of Flux. Check them out on State of Flux on YouTube.
Check out my channel. We were just talking Avatar, and he found out that there's new Star Wars.
I thought they were done with Star Wars movies. So if you've seen our Avatar 2 review, you saw my real-time reaction to the news, I guess, of more Star Wars movies. He's going to talk and tell us what's going on.
So, my understanding with the new Star Wars movies, they made an announcement of several films. It sounds like each one is to be a trilogy, but that's also kind of a question mark.
Jesus.
They announced 3 trilogies, or maybe just a trilogy of movies, but not connected. Well, also saying that Taika Waititi, who did Thor Ragnarok, still planning to do his Star Wars movie, but they didn't have much in the way of information on that, just that's something in the near future. Patty Jenkins' film, Rogue Squadron, is officially not happening as of now. I don't know what the scenario is around that. There's a lot of internet conjecture, but I don't rely on what internet conjecture is, especially when it relates to female directors, because there's discourse, to say the least, when it comes to that. So what they did announce was the TV show The Mandalorian will conclude with a theatrical feature film and possibly a feature film trilogy. This is where I have my information kind of questionable, but Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are going to be directing and writing, respectively, the finale arc of what they've been doing with The Mandalorian. If this was like late 2019 or early 2020, I think people would really care about that, but my sense on how people responded to specifically the last couple episodes of Season 2 of Mandalorian and most of Season 3 is I don't know that the enthusiasm is necessarily going to be there as much as Disney thinks it will. But we will see how much Baby Yoda has left in him. Briefly, have you watched The Mandalorian at all?
Nah, I'm kind of adverse to signing up for Disney Plus, so...
Well, there you go. I watched the first season of The Mandalorian up until Rise of Skywalker came out, and that movie broke me, so I never watched the last episode of Season 1.
That movie ruined Mandalorian.
It just ruined Star Wars for me.
Oh, Star Wars in general.
I was just, after watching it, I was like, I don't know if I need this anymore. I kind of worked it out, that I have grown, as Yoda says in The Last Jedi, we are what they grow beyond.
Are you going to do the Yoda voice?
We are what they grow beyond. I grew beyond Star Wars, and it took Rise of Skywalker to kind of break me.
Understandable.
So I never watched the last episode. What I thought of it at the time is it's essentially a Western TV show, Crime of the Week program, and if ever you watched Lone Wolf and Cub or Shogun Assassin, it's that. They're Japanese film or television, depending on how you watched it, from late 70s, I want to say. Okay. It's the Star Wars version of that story, basically unadjusted. And I liked Lone Wolf and Cub, so I was kind of there for it in the beginning. But then I just got to a point where, as I was watching The Mandalorian, it was like just watching characters that are similar to characters that you love, but that aren't. So it's like, this is Boba Fett, but it's not really Boba Fett. This is Mando, the Mandalorian. This is Yoda, but it's not really Yoda, it's the child. This is IG-88, but it's not IG-88, this is IG-88's twin, or whatever.
So can you describe IG? Is that a robot?
Yeah, do you remember Empire Strikes Back? He was the long metal robot that's one of the bounty hunters.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
He's
it kind of like reminds you of the Tin Man or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's
anorexic? Yeah,
pretty much. He's in like the pilot episode, but like it was just so much of that throughout the entire series.
Characters that look like classic characters that are not.
Yeah, because Disney wants to give you the illusion of something new, but is too afraid to play with to present anything actually new. So much so that by season 2 of The Mandalorian, which is why I didn't watch the show, they just started bringing in the old people. So instead of having Mandalorian, who's the Boba Fett posit, they're like, fuck it, let's just bring Boba Fett in here as well. So Boba Fett's in it, and they get the actor from the prequel trilogy to reprise the role of not Jango Fett, but he was the clone, so Boba Fett. And so it is kind of neat that they brought him back.
Okay.
And then you've got, spoiler alert, Luke Skywalker shows up, and they de-aged Mark Hamill so that he's Return of the Jedi old and stuff like that. And then they have Ahsoka if you watch the Clone Wars cartoon show. And they just started bringing in they stopped bringing in the characters that resembled others, and then they just brought in the same characters. So I'm kind of over The Mandalorian. I did not watch Season 3. I've watched the last episode of Season 2 because I heard that a big surprise cameo showed up and it ended up being Luke Skywalker, and I watched it, and I thought it was neat in a bubble, again, having no context getting to that point, but it undoes everything that The Last Jedi kind of established with that character, so I felt like this was more just course correcting away from Last Jedi.
Apology, yeah.
Yeah, which I'm not on board with.
Well, yeah, because your favorite is...
My favorite became The Last Jedi over time.
We'll see what the comments look like after
yeah, I know. At me. I'm wearing a Star Wars shirt. So anyway, so that's the first one that was announced, a conclusion to The Mandalorian.
Okay.
I'd watch it, I guess, just because I'll watch more Star Wars. Maybe enough time will have elapsed and I can get back into it. The next one that they announced was a throwback to the old Republic. They were going to do the first Jedi, and it's the story of the rise of the Jedi set 10,000 years in the past.
Boy!
And like that could be interesting to see how a religion establishes itself. That could be kind of cool. If you watched or listened to our review of the 3 Disney Star Wars movies,
yeah, in the spring we did basically telephone reviews.
I said that what I thought they were going to do with Rise of Skywalker, just based on the title of the film, was that Rey was going to declare herself a Skywalker, not in familial lineage, but in like religion, and you were going to discover that no more are there Jedi or Sith. You're going to see an interesting blend of what people, I guess, would call a gray Jedi, but she would coin a Skywalker because it takes an Anakin and a Luke to kind of get there. And so I thought that's what all this was leading to, was the development of its own religion.
If you haven't heard that discussion, like I want to say, you're reminding me that you had so many better ideas than what they did.
Oh.
Like I like when you were saying what you thought it was going to be or what you
Yeah.
hoped it was going to be before you saw it. I remember thinking, God dang, that would have been great. And I think I said that a couple times.
I remember that.
So if you want to hear his hopes or what his thoughts were for like the Rise of Skywalker, feel free to listen to those phone call conversations.
So taking that idea and watching a religion emerge from essentially nothingness, the first Jedi and creation of a first Jedi Order could be interesting, even though it's still playing with stuff we're familiar with. And why must we always go back? Why can't we ever go forward? Like, why didn't they go 10,000 years in the future? Like, you could have done something where you're on like this world full of brimming life and green and stuff like that, and having a person...
Sirens and stoplights.
Yeah, but have like, say there is no more Jedi. Nobody has access to that Force anymore, even though the Force is always there. Somebody's always going to have access to it, according to like Obi-Wan. And have a character learn to tap into that, and then you find out that this planet brimming with life is actually Hoth. Just 10,000 years in the future. The Ice Age is over and it's a brimming life. Establishing something new but playing with something old.
That reminds me of the beginning of the first X-Files movie, where it was like so many thousand years in the past, and it was this winter tundra, and they said like Texas or something. Yeah. That was cool.
Right?
And how cool would that be? And you know what you do? You do the whole movie. It's kind of like Waterworld. It might be, it was the extended cut or whatever, where it's not in the theatrical version, where they see that the highest point of the land is Mount Everest.
Yeah.
I don't know why they cut that out of the theatrical. That was genius. But anyway, that idea is amazing. But only you wouldn't reveal its Hoth until like the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Last shot. Somehow you'd have like a you know, remnants of one of them.
Like
You
an
know,
archaeological,
you-
you could have a character doing like archaeological digging somewhere or something like that, trying to get to this great find,
Find an AT-AT foot.
and then find the AT-AT. Like that's what they've been digging up throughout the whole movie or something like that. I don't know. Just throwing that out there. So anyway, enough about my gripes with why must we always go to the past. The other movie they announced is actually one that is going into the future, but only a few years into the future. They announced a sequel movie with Rey, establishing her Jedi Order. And how...
I can't believe after all the backlash there's...
I feel like a lot of the backlash that the movies got had more to do with filmmaker backlash rather than character. And there's definitely a sect of the internet that really came at certain characters, but I think it's just small portions of the net. Like when you work at a theater and you hear the ground level of people's response and stuff like that,
like he does.
Very few people were just like, oh, right.
Right. Oh, okay. So it's just
It was more people coming out and being like,
oh, the movie.
yeah, pretty much. And then, yeah, so that
I got you. That's a good point.
General perspective on things. I think a lot of people weren't as down on Rey as like portions of the internet will have you make.
That's
However,
fair.
if you're making a movie where you know that you're no longer tied to the legacy sequel of it all because Mark Hamill has said he is done playing that character, Carrie Fisher's off the table, and Han Solo is dead, you can make a movie free of the original trilogy and really focus on trying to build something new. So that one has something that's interesting and compelling to me, especially if somebody were to like dive into, this is a woman who's calling herself Rey Skywalker. Well, why is that going to like stick? Is she going to be villainized for being somebody who, yeah, Luke was pretty great, but look at what Vader did, and he was a Skywalker before. Like, you can go in an interesting way with this. However, she's the only one that's currently established as being in the movie. The other characters and actors haven't really talked about it. I think Adam Driver was asked, and his answer was kind of like, I want to see the script. And then John Boyega this past week, he was promoting a Netflix film, and he said that he's not opposed to doing Star Wars as long as it's got a good script or a good director. However, it's important to note that the only Star Wars movie that he liked that he's done was Force Awakens, and he liked Rise of Skywalker better than The Last Jedi, so he's a true, like, JJ fanboy. So, take that with...
what you will.
Yeah, what you will. So anyway, those are the movies that are announced. A unknown Taika Waititi movie that we know nothing about, but it's going to be very Taika, and that has its own pitfalls and trappings, as well as its own positive things. I do think Taika Waititi is one of the best filmmakers of the past 15 years. Then you have the Mandalorian sequel, you have the first Jedi prequel, and episode 10 in a roundabout way, but they won't call it episode 10.
Well, right, yeah.
So what are your thoughts on those 4 projects?
Yeah, you know, I thought that the movies were all, but I mean, I guess we could, you know, it's only a matter of time before they want to start putting movies back. I just thought, well, like you say, I mean, just because, you know, an internet, you know, consensus is what it might not be a true consensus. So there's a, you know, there's reality consensus, internet consensus. They might not be the same. I was under the impression that, you know, people more or less just really couldn't, as you know, like after Rogue One, the disenfranchising was starting with the Star Wars films for the fans, which was understandable, even though you and I both think out of the sequel trilogy, the middle one, Last Jedi, is the best.
Yeah.
And my favorite of the Star Wars films, you know, of the Disney ones, is Rogue One.
Yeah.
you know, people really didn't like Last Jedi. They didn't. I don't think they really liked Rise of Skywalker. They didn't really like, what was that other one, Solo. My reaction is just surprised that Disney's going to do any more movies. And
I think what it came down to was Mandalorian.
we bought this damn franchise.
Well, there's that. Mandalorian was so damn popular,
right.
and then Obi-Wan came out, and that had insanely good numbers. And for my money, Obi-Wan's a phenomenal show. If you haven't watched it, that is the best thing.
Here is what I think they should have done instead: Obi-Wan as the film movies.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
So that was the plan. The TV show for Obi-Wan, the first person who's credited as screenwriter for the shows, he's on credited for episodes 1, 2, 3, and 6. He didn't have any contributions to episode 4 and 5. Was written as a screenplay for a movie, and they expanded it to a 6-episode story. He did not put pen to paper at all, or I guess finger to keys, at all for the TV show. He just gets first credit because it was his initial baby that they just repurposed, and other people came in and wrote it. I do think the Obi-Wan show was great. If they had made that just 2 movies, it was so emotionally powerful.
I think they missed the boat there.
I do too.
And honestly, after the success of Mandalorian, which I was aware of even though I wasn't watching it, they really, someone, not that there's anyone with any brains at Disney or whatever, but too bad someone didn't have enough brains to say, okay, Mandalorian is a hit, let's do Obi-Wan as, like you say, 2 movies, and, you know, reinvigorate the people, Star Wars fans, in the theater again.
The way that the show, like, I'll get into just a touch of spoilers for Obi-Wan for somebody who hasn't seen it. If you had just done episodes 1, 2, and 3 of Obi-Wan as one movie, and episodes 4, 5, and 6 as one movie, it would have had such a compelling end, because
a perfect ending point of the
like
first film?
for the first film, because it ends with a confrontation between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, meeting Darth Vader in person for the first time since back in the day, and Vader is just holding him in place and is releasing his rage, and he creates a pit of there's like a bunch of sand in front of it, and he lights the sand on fire and throws Obi-Wan into it, and he's like, that's what it feels like, and then kind of walks out as Obi-Wan is like burning, and it would have been such a powerful like ending point
to the first
and then you're
movie.
just like, what happens next? And then
now I really think they missed the boat on
yeah, and then the ending of the actual show had me in absolute tears. Like, it is so well written. That last episode of the show.
Okay,
so
they missed the boat.
They did, and I think episode 6 wasn't even the best one. Episode 5 is the best episode of the entire series. That one was really smart and complex episode. And Ewan McGregor gave a great performance. But anyway, yes, I agree. They should have done an Obi-Wan show.
That's what I think
Or
they should have. They did do a show.
Yeah, they did.
But those are my thoughts. Like kind of like you, not completely, but in a lot of ways, the Star Wars ship has flown for me in a lot of ways too. Hence my uninterest in Mandalorian. I would be more interested in Obi-Wan because it's like, Ewan, how do you say his name?
Ewan McGregor.
Reprising his role.
Yeah.
So I would have been more interested in that. But until they start making Friday the 13th stuff or whatever, I refuse to sign up for Disney Plus. So.
Fair enough. I don't think
They're not going to do Friday the 13th?
Not yet. They haven't bought that one yet this time. Disney's on there.
There is time, but do you think that's good for this?
That's good for this episode.
Well, thank you very much, Matt, for presenting us with that information, of which I had no idea any of it was happening. You can see my actual reaction to the news in the Avatar 2 Teal People Wet review. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, we'll catch you on the next one.
Have a good one.